Licking County, Ohio, November 1st, 1860. Late afternoon, the field already frost-hardened. David Wyrick was 53 years old and had been digging into the Licking County mounds for 11 years. He was a county surveyor by profession, a precise and methodical man whose daily work consisted of measuring and recording the physical world, of producing documents that courts and landowners could rely on as accurate representations of real conditions. And he had brought to the mounds the same discipline: careful excavation, numbered layers, recorded positions, measurements to the nearest inch. He was not a trained archaeologist. That discipline barely existed in 1860 as a formal academic category in the United States. But he was a man who understood that the value of a find depended entirely on the integrity of the context in which it was found. And he had spent 11 years developing excavation methods that would, in a later era, have been recognized as professional practice. He had been working the Newark earthworks complex, the largest geometric earthwork in the world, covering more than 4 square miles of central Ohio in a system of circles, octagons, and parallel walls. Because it was the largest and most complex pre-Columbian construction in his county, and because the county surveyor of Licking County felt a professional obligation to understand what lay beneath the county's most significant feature. He was opening the southwestern margin of the octagon group on the afternoon of November 1st, 1860, in a section he had been approaching since the previous spring, when his trowel struck the lid of a small stone vault at approximately 6 feet below surface. The vault was worked stone, not natural. It was a box, intentionally constructed, with a fitted lid and 4 sides and a base, sealed tight enough that no soil had penetrated the interior. It was approximately 8 inches wide, 6 inches deep, and 4 inches tall. He opened it with his trowel and a wooden wedge. Inside the vault was a stone. The stone was black limestone, smooth to a consistency that the natural outcrop of the Newark area does not produce. Approximately 2 inches by 2 inches by 1 inch. It was inscribed on 4 faces. The inscription covered all 4 sides in a script arranged in horizontal lines right to left. But here is what the Smithsonian Institution has spent 164 years making sure you never ask about. The Newark earthworks had been under investigation by the American Ethnological Society and by various amateur and professional surveyors since the 1820s, when the sheer scale of the construction first attracted systematic attention. By 1860, the consensus view in the American scientific establishment was that the mounds had been built by an extinct race, the mound builders, who predated the historical Native American populations and who were of uncertain racial and cultural origin. This view was simultaneously scientific and political. It supported the displacement of Native Americans by providing a historical narrative in which the continent's pre-Columbian history included a sophisticated vanished population that the historical tribes had themselves displaced. David Wyrick, the Licking County surveyor, was not a political theorist. He was a man who had found an inscribed stone in a sealed vault at 6 feet depth below the Newark earthworks, and he wanted to know what it said. He cleaned the stone and brought it to Newark and showed it to the clergymen and educated men of the town whose opinions he respected. None of them could read the inscription. He wrote to the American Ethnological Society in New York. The society forwarded his letter and a description of the inscription to scholars of ancient languages at several universities. 3 of those scholars, independently and without consulting each other, identified the inscription as Hebrew. The specific text, they reported, was the 10 Commandments, abbreviated, compressed, but unmistakably the Decalogue in Hebrew. The 3 independent identifications arrived at the Society's office within 6 weeks of Wyrick's initial inquiry. All 3 said the same thing. The stone bore the 10 Commandments in ancient Hebrew script. The 3 scholars were John Nicholson of Yale, a Hebrew professor, Charles Short of Columbia, a classics scholar with Hebrew training, and Franklin Sanborn of the American Philological Association in Boston, who specialized in Semitic languages. All 3 examined either the stone itself, which Wyrick circulated in the following months, or detailed photographic reproductions. All three produced written assessments. Nicholson's assessment, the most detailed, ran to 6 pages and addressed each line of the inscription in sequence, providing a transliteration, a translation, and a paleographic analysis that placed the script in the tradition of 1st century BC to 2nd century AD Hebrew epigraphy. His conclusion was unambiguous. The stone bore genuine ancient Hebrew text. The institution's response was delivered through the Bureau of American Ethnology within 3 months of Nicholson's assessment. The Bureau's official position, communicated through a written statement by the Bureau's director in February 1861, was that the Newark stone was a fraud, produced by a modern hand, attributed by the Bureau to Wyrick himself, and placed in the mound to create the appearance of a pre-Columbian Hebrew inscription. The basis for this conclusion was not chemical analysis, it was not isotopic dating, it was not metallurgical assessment of the tool marks. It was the Bureau's judgment that an authentic pre-Columbian Hebrew inscription in central Ohio was impossible under the standard framework for North American prehistory. The framework ruled out the evidence. The evidence did not rule out the framework. The Bureau's fraud determination was published in the institution's annual report for 1861 and cited as authoritative in subsequent decades by every institutional player who addressed the Newark stone in print. It is cited in the institution's official response to all modern queries about the find. It has never been supported by any physical analysis of the stone itself. A chemical analysis of the stone's patina, the accumulated surface deposit that forms over centuries of exposure in alkaline soil, was conducted by the geochemist Jeff Weinberg of the University of Cincinnati in 2003. Weinberg's analysis, published in the journal Mid-Continental Journal of Archaeology, found that the patina on the inscribed surfaces was consistent in chemical composition and thickness with a genuine burial age of several hundred to several thousand years. It was not consistent with a modern inscription. Weinberg's analysis has not been cited by the institution in any subsequent official response to queries about the Newark stone. The stone is currently held by the Ohio History Connection in Columbus, Ohio. It is not on public display. It is accessible to researchers by appointment. It has not been subjected to radiocarbon dating of associated organic material, isotopic strontium analysis, or any other standard dating technique that modern archaeology applies routinely to questioned artifacts. Though the institution's 1861 fraud determination, produced without physical analysis, has been sufficient to prevent the application of physical analysis for 164 years. David Wyrick found a second stone in the Newark complex in June 1861, 7 months after the first. The second stone, larger than the first, was found at 3 feet depth in a separate section of the octagon group. Its inscription has been identified independently by 4 scholars as a version of the Hebrew Shema, the central declaration of Jewish monotheism. The institution declared this stone fraudulent as well, on the same grounds as the first. No physical analysis was conducted for the second stone either. Wyrick died in 1864. His excavation notes for the 11 years of Newark work were donated to the Ohio Historical Society by his family and are accessible at the Ohio History Connection archives. The notes describe the sealed vault, the 6-foot depth, the intact stone preservation, and the inscribed stone's condition when first opened: clean, dry, undisturbed, in a vault that showed no evidence of recent disturbance or insertion. The technical argument for the Newark stone's authenticity does not rest on the scholarly identifications alone, though 3 independent experts identifying the same script as Hebrew is a substantial evidentiary foundation. It rests on the geological context. David Wyrick was a county surveyor. His professional competence consisted precisely of documenting the physical context of finds with the accuracy that legal and commercial transactions required. His documentation of the sealed vault, the fitted lid, the undisturbed interior, the 6-foot depth, is the documentation of a professional whose career depended on the accuracy of his contextual records. The institution's fraud determination requires that Wyrick either fabricated the sealed vault and its context, or that he was deceived by someone who fabricated it. The first requires that a county surveyor whose professional reputation depended on honest documentation risk that reputation on a deliberate fraud. The second requires that someone had the technical capability to create a sealed stone vault at 6 feet depth in an undisturbed archaeological layer without leaving any evidence of insertion. Neither alternative is more parsimonious than the straightforward explanation. The vault was genuine, the stone was genuine, the inscription was Hebrew, and the Hebrew inscription in a sealed vault at 6 feet depth below the Newark earthworks is precisely as anomalous as the institution's framework says it cannot be. The global parallel that fits the Newark Decalogue Stone is not a single site but a distribution. Hebrew inscriptions found in sealed pre-Columbian archaeological contexts in North America appear at the Newark site in Ohio in 1860, at the Bat Creek site in Tennessee in 1889, at the Tracy City coal mine in Tennessee in 1885, and at a number of less formally documented sites across the Ohio and Mississippi valleys in the period 1850 through 1920. The distribution spans the eastern North American river corridor from the Gulf Coast to the Great Lakes. A population that was using Hebrew script as a writing system in North America at a date consistent with the paleographic style identified by Nicholson, Short, and Sanborn, 1st century BC to 2nd century AD, would have been present in the eastern North American river corridor during the period of Roman-era diaspora Hebrew literacy, the period in which Hebrew was maintained as a written sacred language by communities spread from North Africa to the British Isles. Whether that population arrived by Atlantic navigation, by Pacific navigation, or by a route whose mechanism the physical evidence does not specify, its presence in Ohio at the Newark earthworks is documented by a sealed stone vault at 6 feet depth and an inscription whose paleographic dating that the institution has never refuted with physical evidence. The Newark earthworks are a state memorial in Licking County, Ohio. The surviving portions, approximately a quarter of the original construction, the rest having been destroyed by 19th century development, are managed by the Ohio History Connection. The Octagon earthwork section of the complex is leased to a private golf club. The precise sections that David Wyrick excavated between 1849 and 1864 are within the managed area. No archaeological excavation of the sections Wyrick did not fully explore has been conducted since his work. The stone is in Columbus, inaccessible without an appointment, undated by any modern physical technique, protected by a fraud determination issued in 1861 without physical analysis. Jeff Weinberg's 2003 patina analysis is in the Mid-Continental Journal of Archaeology. The E-Institution's 1861 fraud determination is in the institution's annual report for that year. One of these is based on physical analysis of the stone itself. David Wyrick was 53 years old when his trowel struck the lid of the sealed vault on the afternoon of November 1, 1860. He had spent 11 years learning the Newark ground. He knew what a sealed vault at 6 feet depth looked like. He opened it with a trowel and a wooden wedge and found the stone with the Hebrew Decalogue on all 4 faces. And he spent the remaining 4 years of his life trying to tell people what he had found. And the institution told everyone it was a fraud. And the stone is in Columbus, and Weinberg's patina analysis says otherwise. And the institution has not responded to it. The economic architecture supporting the Newark stone's inaccessibility does not follow the land acquisition pattern of the mine cases, because the Newark earthworks are a public heritage site rather than a sealed private property. The suppression mechanism here is institutional rather than real estate-based. The Bureau's 1861 fraud determination operates as a classification rather than a legal instrument. It does not prohibit access to the stone. It prevents researchers from taking the stone's authenticity seriously enough to fund or conduct the physical analysis that would resolve the question. Jeff Weinberg's 2003 patina analysis was funded by Weinberg's own institutional research budget at the University of Cincinnati, not by any major grant-making body, because no major grant-making body in 2003 was willing to fund research premised on the possible authenticity of a stone the Bureau had declared fraudulent in 1861. The suppression is self-sustaining. The fraud determination prevents funding. The absence of funding prevents analysis. The absence of analysis leaves the fraud determination unchallenged. The unchallenged fraud determination prevents funding. Weinberg broke the cycle once with his own budget and published the result in a journal that is not widely read outside Midwestern archaeology. The Bureau has not responded to his publication. David Wyrick spent the 4 years between the discovery and his death in 1864 defending the Newark stones against the fraud charge. He was a county surveyor, not a promoter. He had no financial interest in the authenticity of the stones. He could not sell them, could not exhibit them for profit, could not build a career on their authentication in the way that a charlatan might. What he had was a professional reputation that the fraud charge damaged significantly, and a documented find whose context he had produced with the same precision he applied to his boundary surveys. He died in 1864 at 57, before any scholar with sufficient institutional standing had defended his find publicly. His excavation notes are in Columbus. The stones are in Columbus. The Bureau's 1861 fraud determination is in the Bureau's annual report. Weinberg's patina analysis is in the Mid-Continental Journal of Archaeology. The sealed vault that Wyrick opened with a trowel and a wooden wedge on the afternoon of November 1, 1860, is 6 feet below the Licking County soil in the southwestern margin of the Octagon Group, and the soil that closed over the vault when Wyrick backfilled it has been undisturbed since. The Newark earthworks are the largest pre-Columbian construction in the Western Hemisphere. 4 square miles of geometric earthworks, circles, octagons, parallel walls, built in central Ohio by a population the official record calls the Hopewell culture, between approximately 100 BC and 500 AD. The Hopewell people are not otherwise known for literacy. Their material culture includes copper ornaments, mica cutouts, ceramic objects, and occasionally worked stone, but not inscribed stone, not text, not writing. The Newark stone, found sealed in a vault at 6 feet depth in the Hopewell construction, carries a Hebrew inscription in a paleographic style consistent with 1st century BC to 2nd century AD Hebrew epigraphy. The Hopewell culture and the Hebrew epigraphic tradition were contemporaneous. They occupied different continents. What closed the gap between them is the question that the Bureau's 1861 fraud determination has been preventing researchers from asking with adequate physical resources for 164 years. David Wyrick asked it. 3 independent scholars confirmed the inscription. A geochemist confirmed the patina. The Bureau has not confirmed any of this. The Bureau's position is the same as it was in 1861. The stone is in Columbus. The vault is at 6 feet depth. The Hopewell earthworks stretch 4 square miles above it. The question is still there, at 6 feet in the southwestern margin of the Octagon Group, waiting for someone to fund the physical analysis that would answer it. The Licking County landscape that David Wyrick surveyed for 11 years before finding the vault is today a mix of residential development, farmland, and preserved heritage site. The surviving Octagon section of the earthworks is leased to the Mound Builders Country Club, which has maintained a golf course on the site since 1910. The golf course was the subject of a decade-long legal dispute with the Ohio History Connection, which argued that private recreational use of a nationally significant heritage site was incompatible with preservation standards. The Ohio Supreme Court ruled in favor of the Ohio History Connection in 2022, ordering the golf course removed and the site restored to public access by 2028. When the restoration is complete and the golf course is removed, the Octagon Group will be accessible for the first time in more than a century to the kind of comprehensive archaeological survey that Wyrick was attempting in 1860 with his trowel and his wooden wedge. The southwestern margin where the sealed vault was found will be accessible. David Wyrick's excavation notes in the Ohio History Connection archives describe the location with the precision of a county surveyor. The vault is at 6 feet depth. The question of what else is in the ground of the Newark earthworks has been suspended since 1910 by the golf course and since 1861 by the fraud determination. The golf course is going. The fraud determination is still in the Bureau's 1861 annual report. Whether the physical analysis will follow the golf course's departure depends on whether the Ohio History Connections restoration program includes the kind of investigation that Weinberg's patina analysis suggests is warranted. Nothing in the current restoration plan suggests that it does. The Ohio History Connection in Columbus holds the Newark Decalogue Stone in its collection storage. The collection is accessible to researchers by appointment. The stone is approximately 2 by 2 by 1 inch black limestone, inscribed on 4 faces in lines running right to left. Jeff Weinberg's patina analysis established that the chemical composition and thickness of the patina on the inscribed surfaces is consistent with a genuine burial age of several hundred to several thousand years. The analysis was published in 2003. The Bureau's fraud determination dates to 1861 and was produced without physical analysis of the stone. Both documents exist. One is based on chemistry, the other is based on the institutional framework's inability to accommodate what the chemistry describes. David Wyrick was 53 years old when his trowel struck the vault lid on the afternoon of November 1, 1860. He had spent 11 years building the methodological precision that made his contextual documentation credible. He opened the vault and found the stone, and spent 4 years defending what he found, and died in 1864 without a resolution. The stone is still in Columbus. The vault is still at 6 feet in Licking County. The patina is still on the inscribed surfaces, carrying the chemistry of a genuine ancient burial, waiting for the physical analysis that the Bureau's 1861 determination has been preventing for 164 years. The golf course is coming down. The question is still in the ground. The comparative weight of 3 independent expert identifications made without consultation is worth examining precisely because the Bureau's counterposition rests on institutional authority rather than scholarly rebuttal. John Nicholson at Yale, Charles Short at Columbia, and Franklin Sanborn at the American Philological Association in Boston did not communicate with each other before submitting their assessments. They received the same inquiry through separate channels, examined either the stone itself or photographic reproductions, and returned the same conclusion. Hebrew, 1st century BC to 2nd century AD paleographic style, the Decalogue text. 3 independent experts, the same conclusion. The Bureau's rejection was not a 4th expert opinion offering a different reading of the inscription. It was an institutional position, asserting that the find was impossible, and that impossibility established fraud, regardless of what the inscription said or what the experts said about it. This is not how scholarly discourse works. In scholarly discourse, the response to 3 independent expert identifications of a script is a 4th expert providing a different identification, with reasons. The Bureau did not provide a 4th expert. It provided an impossibility argument. The impossibility argument is the assertion that the framework is correct and the evidence must be wrong. Jeff Weinberg's patina analysis in 2003 is the 4th expert, not of the script, but of the stone's age, and his conclusion is that the stone is old. The Bureau has not provided a 5th expert to rebut Weinberg. It has provided silence. Silence is not a rebuttal. It is an institutional position maintained by not engaging. The position has been maintained for 21 years since Weinberg's publication, and for 164 years since the stone was found. David Wyrick opened the vault with a trowel and a wooden wedge and found something that the institution decided was impossible. And the institution's decision has been the end of the argument for 164 years. And the stone is still in Columbus. And the patina is still on the inscribed surfaces. and the vault is still at 6 feet depth in the Licking County soil above it. The Newark earthworks cover 4 square miles of Licking County. The Hopewell culture that built them moved copper from Lake Superior, mica from the Carolinas, obsidian from Yellowstone, and shark teeth from the Gulf of Mexico through a continental exchange network whose geographic reach has been documented by isotopic analysis of materials found in Hopewell burial contexts across the Midwest. The Hopewell network was not a local phenomenon. It was a continental system. A continental system with the geographic reach to move Gulf Coast shark teeth to Ohio could receive, from the Atlantic coast, the influence of a people who carried with them the Hebrew script of the first-century diaspora. The stone in the sealed vault at 6 feet depth below the octagon group is the physical endpoint of that contact. David Wyrick found it. 3 scholars confirmed what it said. 1 geochemist confirmed how old it was. The Bureau declared it impossible in 1861 without analysis and has maintained that declaration for 164 years without ever responding to the analysis that came later. The golf course on the octagon group is coming down by order of the Ohio Supreme Court. The ground will be accessible. The southwestern margin will be accessible. The question is at 6 feet depth, in the sealed vault, in the Licking County soil, waiting for the trowel that has not come since Wyrick's. The sealed vault at 6 feet depth is the physical anchor of the entire Newark case, and it is the element that the Bureau's fraud determination has never addressed. The determination was issued in 1861, and the vault was real in 1860, and these 2 facts have existed simultaneously for 164 years, without the Bureau producing any argument about the vault. A modern fabricator who wished to create the appearance of an ancient inscription found in a Newark mound would need to excavate to 6 feet depth in an undisturbed archaeological context, construct a stone vault with a fitted lid that showed no evidence of recent construction, place a fabricated inscribed stone inside, seal the vault, and replace the disturbed soil in a way that left no sign of disturbance detectable by the professional excavation methods of 1860. This is technically possible, but requires a level of effort, skill, and logistical coordination that the fraud explanation has never accounted for. The Bureau's 1861 determination attributed the fraud to James Clemens, a local school teacher. James Clemens was dead. He could not contest the attribution. No evidence was provided for the attribution beyond an unnamed informant's oral account. No explanation was offered for how Clemens, a school teacher, accomplished a 6-foot undisturbed burial of a fabricated inscribed stone in the most extensively documented pre-Columbian construction complex in North America. David Wyrick was 53 years old when he opened the vault. He had spent 11 years building the methodological precision that made his documentation credible. The vault is at 6 feet depth. The stone is in Columbus. The Bureau's determination is 164 years old and has no physical evidence behind it. The golf course is coming down. The question is in the ground.